Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robby Burns, and this week's guest is my co-host of the Class Nerd podcast, Craig McClellan. We break apart Apple's recent developer conference Keynote, discuss all the features coming to their operating systems in the fall, and think a little bit about how teachers might take advantage of those features once they're released. If you're joining me after last week's 3 soundtrack projects your students will love podcast episode, I am excited to let you know that I will be talking more about getting students to compose in the next episode. I have a very special guest. Composer Alex Shapiro will be joining the show to talk with me about her creative process for writing music, composing for young ensembles, getting young musicians to compose for the first time, and just the conversation covered so many other interesting intersections between music and technology, and it was just so great to talk with her. So that's coming up soon. Stay tuned. I have some follow-up, but I feel like we should probably at least recognize our other show before we get too far.
Yeah.
I definitely would like to welcome new listeners to the show and say thanks for joining me. And Craig is with me. Hi, Craig.
Hey.
It's worth explaining how we know each other. So, I mean, you are outside of the music teaching community, but we had a podcast together that ran a couple of seasons called the Class Nerd Podcast. And that podcast is still available in all podcast players. And I listen to it every couple months. I think it holds up. I think both seasons. Yeah, I think both seasons are good. If you're a teacher and you use Apple stuff, it's a show where we talk all about using Apple technologies, Apple hardware, software, and third-party apps to do a good job in the classroom.
Yeah. And, part of the reason that show ended was not because we dislike each other. Obviously, we're here tonight, but I left the classroom and now work in ed tech. And so it felt a little disingenuous to have a show about that when I wasn't there anymore. But I also need an outlet to talk about Apple stuff. So whenever Robby invites me on, I just say yes. So I'm excited to talk about some Apple stuff tonight and, think about it through the lens of when I was in the classroom and things like that. But overall, just have a buddy to talk with about this stuff.
Yeah. So I have one piece of meta discussion related to this show.
Okay.
But before we do, I guess I should say we are going to be talking about Apple's developer conference Keynote, which happened yesterday. And this is not their sexiest live presentation. A lot of people tune into the fall thing where they release the new iPhone. I know that's very, very popular. This was a developer conference. So it's all the what is your software going to do next fall? And, one could argue, what does this have to do with music teaching? We, on our other show, I feel is... We could not stop thinking of content and ideas. So to me, there's using my Apple stuff in the classroom is those are not teaching and using technology are not two separate things. And I always get really excited when I think what is my stuff going to be able to do for me in the coming year. And this is exactly just a 2-hour presentation completely full of all of the new features that not only will Apple products do, but that other third-party developers will be able to do with their apps.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, go ahead because I'm itching. So let's go ahead and you can do your meta stuff, and then we'll go.
All right. I have an announcement. I'm launching a Patreon for the show, but I do want to just take this spot and this opportunity to say that podcasts are not zero work. They have not only are there countless hours of editing and publishing and planning to get guests on the show, but there's also just a lot of minor fees associated with producing the show that add up. Things like website hosting, podcast hosting, these audio files have to live somewhere on the internet. They certainly don't live on my computer. Editing tools, and then of course equipment upgrades, and then of course just the general support and motivation to keep doing the show. I was able to go up to 2 episodes a month because COVID sort of made me a little bit more stationary this past year, but I think that I can maintain that episode pace and of course my more rigorous blog posting pace as well in the coming school year. And so I'm just asking for everyone's support. If you listen and you want to throw me a couple bucks, there's 4 tiers. The first one is only $3, and there are some perks. My idea is that if you want to throw me $3 a month, that you're supporting me making this thing, but you do get some things. I'm going to be doing a monthly real quick video of like some apps, some music that I've been engaging with every month for Patreon subscribers, and then even like some teaching workflows that basically just creative ways I'm using technology in the classroom. And then you get to become a part of our Discord server. Craig, what is a Discord server?
So it's basically like Slack, but better. And it can be more, it's more, Slack is internal to companies, but Discord is more open to different communities. So for instance, I was hoping that this is the announcement you were going to be making. Robby and I didn't talk about this in advance at all, but like yesterday during Apple's keynote, several folks who had kind of early access to the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord server were watching together and just having conversations about what Apple's doing. It was a lot of fun. So come join us. I'm there.
Yeah, it's real fun. Lots of past guests on the show are there and are like eager to talk about all things. There's basically like, if you've never used Slack or Discord before, it has a focus on like the gaming community, but it's really just a professional tool for anyone. Basically, you go there and it's kind of just like a chat environment, only there are like separate discussion topics organized by channel, so you can like go to a special channel. I'm experimenting with which channels are relevant. I'm kind of just letting it be an outgrowth of what people want to talk about. But so far, there's like a general channel for whatever. There's an Apple channel. There's a channel about hardware, which I suspect will be, things like devices, but also things like how to set up like mixers at the front of your band room, and like what MIDI keyboards are good for whatever, and like should I get the Ableton Push? There's one for talking about apps, one for sharing lesson plan ideas, one for productivity, one where people can introduce each other. Opened another one today about Google Apps for Education, because a couple people who are in the Discord are like Google wizards. So it's been fun so far over the past couple of days, and lots of people are there. You can ask questions if you want to go ahead and join the Discord, and I'm there, and it's fun. But that's not the only tier. There's other tiers. If you are subscribed to that basic tier, you also get a shout out on the show, and your name will be mentioned in the show notes and in the YouTube description page, because I post these episodes on YouTube too, and that's fun. So then there's like the next tier. Basically, I've been going live on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live once a month, and I do take questions when I do those, but I thought it would be fun. What if I like invited members of this tier to like a Zoom call with me while I do that, and have them sort of steer the direction of like what I cover and what I talk about. So you get like basically a Zoom room to hang out with me once a month. I'll probably do it more than once a month, but at least once a month. And then you get access to a folder of teaching resources that I have, and they're made in apps such as Pages, OmniGraffle, Solver, apps that I've talked about on the show. Basically, I've been throwing in things like they're like concert program templates, seating chart templates. I've got this cool like pizza calculator. You need the app Solver to actually use this, but it's like basically like my calculator that helps me to like calculate the associated costs with buying pizza for kids on a field trip. Pretty fun. All of my OmniFocus project templates I'm going to dump in there, and then I'm going to put in there my scale play along exercises that I released last fall, which are basically like justly in tune drones for musicians to practice their scales along to with like beats under them. So they're super engaging, super fun, great for teaching intonation. The next tier is called Backstage Access, and you basically get a special channel that you have access to in the Discord, where you can like talk to me about like recommending future guests, future topics. This is kind of like you want to like be behind the scenes of the stuff I'm doing, because you also get the stems to those play along tracks where you can actually like edit them in GarageBand or Logic to your heart's content. Speed up the tempo, slow down the tempo, add your own software instruments, make it your own, make it sound like whatever. And then I'm also going to be giving preview access to a couple of future audio and video projects that I've got down the pipeline, and getting feedback from those supporters. And then my last tier is kind of like sort of two things. It's like if you want like extra help, like tech support, or if you are a corporate sponsor, you can join this tier, and it gets you either or both of these things. You basically get all of the, obviously they're tiered, so every tier includes everything from the previous tier. But this one also gets you once a month consulting session with me, and or you can have, if you have a product or a brand or something that you want promoted, I will talk about it on my show and pin your logo with a link to your website onto the sidebar of my blog. So those are the tiers. I will never talk about this in as much detail as I just did again, but I think the Discord is going to be real fun. So I just wanted to throw it out there. If you like this show, if you want to help support me, $3 gets you into this cool community where people are talking about music, education, technology, and whatever. It's going to be great.
I'm excited. I'll hopefully get to talk to some folks in the Discord soon.
Sweet. We hope to see you all there. Oh, I should tell you where that is. So it's linked in the show notes, but patreon.com/musicedtechtalk, or just go to my blog. It's on the sidebar. It's already launched now. I did a soft launch. It's live. Someone can stumble across it and subscribe before I'm making this announcement, but I'll have a blog post up about it later in the week. All right, cool. So we're talking about Apple stuff. Yeah, basically Apple has an operating system for each of their main devices. There's iOS, there's iPadOS, watchOS, and then macOS,
tvOS, which was not mentioned, but it's there.
I have thoughts on that. Do we want to go in? I wrote notes in order of the keynote. Do we want to try to...
I have a way that I want to handle this that's a little near and dear to the class nerd heart. I have a topic I want to start with that anybody who is still with us from the class nerd days will appreciate. Robby, what are the maybe 2 topics that we talked about more than anything on the class nerd, would you say?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you want me to break them down conceptually. I mean, we talked a lot about task management.
Yes, that was one of the 2 I was thinking of. Yeah.
I mean, I can't now say the other topic is general productivity, because that sort of encompasses. I mean, I guess one could say are you thinking email?
I was more thinking note taking, but yes.
Oh yeah. Oh well. Of course. The two classic topics where it's I am never satisfied with my apps or workflow for either of those 2 things on my computer.
Yeah, and so I thought, because there are some pretty decent updates to both the Reminders app and the Notes app that for across all of Apple's operating systems, that we could touch on a few of those. Does that work for you?
I mean, these are the things that people use to get their job done. There's certainly themes on this show. Let's do it. Let's go for it.
So before I kind of talk about a few of the updates, I would say conceptually, the big picture theme of WWDC was we're bringing all of our platforms together. So much of the time, Apple would make an announcement and say, this feature is coming to iPhone. And then later they would go, oh yeah, it's on iPad and Mac as well. Or they'd announce it with the Mac OS section and go, oh yeah, this is also going to be on iPhone and iPad. And so just kind of know that as we kind of talk tonight, that almost everything that we say is going to be available across the Apple ecosystem, which is really exciting. So just in case I start or I don't mention iPadOS or iOS when I'm talking about something on the Mac, I think it's important to know that for the most part, it's going to be on everything, which is really cool.
And I'm going to add one thing, and I don't want to derail us because this maybe we get into this later, but a couple episodes ago, Will Kuhn was on the show, and we talked real length about what's going to happen with iPad software. This event was kind of unveiling the future, or at least the next year, of iPad software. And a lot of people thought that what you're saying, bringing the platforms together, what you're saying is that they all sort of move in step with what features they add. But I think a lot of people were thinking that the iPad would now that it basically with a keyboard attached is capable of running the same kinds of software experiences as the Mac, but it doesn't. It has iPadOS. A lot of people were wondering, will we see a new direction for the iPad? I actually don't really feel like we did. I feel like it was pretty clear from a couple things, which we'll get to, that the iPad remains a distinct part of Apple's ecosystem that they want you to use positively in combination with the Mac, rather than hey, we're gonna make this. They are gonna make it better as a laptop, but I didn't feel like there was any hint of, hey, we're gonna make these 2 things, operating systems, more similar to one another, if that makes sense.
Yes. I feel like everything kind of got clarified a little bit, while also making it easier to move between a Mac, an iPad, and an iPhone, because they function in more similar ways. It was a good WWDC in that sense to me.
It's going to be Mac apps on the iPad is what I'm saying. The iPad is still very much the iPad.
Yeah. So, reminders. So, I guess the reason that I wanted to bring this up is a lot of teachers, when they're starting out trying to figure out this whole productivity on my devices thing, a good starting place for them is the built-in apps. And so, I know Robby and I talked extensively about really power user task management tools like OmniFocus or Things, and powerful note-taking apps beyond what the Notes app can do, like Bear or Agenda or drafts, especially Obsidian, some of those that are becoming popular today. But a lot of folks kind of stick with the stock apps. And so I love that some of basically what Apple did was bring some more power user features into those system apps so that people who are starting out there get a richer, fuller experience. And it may not be that Robby and I ever use those apps as, high-level power users, but for the folks who are using them, it just got way better. And so I'm excited about that. Do you want to start with reminders or notes?
I think that I'm more passionate about and more knowledgeable about what the updates are to notes. So maybe we start there?
Well, I can even just do reminders really quickly.
Yeah, tell me about that. So your new job, you've expressed to me, maybe off the air, but you've expressed to me that some of those more powerful task apps are you feel a little less dependent on those and more willing to go with a simple option.
Yes, and part of that is that I have a CRM, a customer relationship management tool that kind of keeps up with, when am I supposed to reach out to certain customers about certain things. And, so really then my day to day, I'm actually task managing in a bullet journal now instead of with a big digital tool. So I could see myself. I know. Yeah, I know. Who would have thought? Paper and pen and fountain pens. That's my new pandemic hobby. But
I forgot. Sorry, this is so terrible of me. I'm so off topic. The third tier of my Patreon gets you early access bootleg feed of this show. So, for example, if we wanted to talk about how you've convinced me recently to buy some fountain pens, that would be a perfect example of the kind of thing that I would cut from the release of this episode, but would leave in the bootleg feed that you can subscribe to if you go to my Backstage Access Patreon tier. Sorry, shameless. I'm shameless.
And should you want to ask myself or Robby about the fountain pens that we've bought, you could ask us in the Discord.
Absolutely happy to talk about fountain pens in that place.
So anyway, the reminders app, the thing that I know, and I don't have any betas yet. I don't have a developer account. I will probably put a public beta on at least my iPad, probably my iPhone when they're available in July, but I have not played with it yet. But you now have dedicated smart lists that you can create in reminders. Now, I don't know what the filtering for that is and how it works exactly, but essentially what that means is you can create your own lists of reminders based on certain criteria. And, tools like OmniFocus or things like that have perspectives that are ridiculously customizable and things like that. And I doubt we will see that level of flexibility in reminders, but the fact that they are giving users more ways to organize their tasks is really cool.
Some of Apple's apps you have to use because they're the only option. Things like iMessage, things like the phone app. And then you've got Apple apps that are good enough. Things like a lot of people who even are nerd power users still really like Apple Mail. That's a great example of a perfectly fine app that Apple makes. And I feel like with to-do stuff and notes, these are definitely two areas where people try a lot more third-party options. And to me, it's just a question of when is Apple's app good enough that that's going to be the thing? And the way that they always get you, the way that they always tempt me is even when Apple's app isn't good enough, it always has some sort of tie-in to the system. That some way where it's easier to get stuff into it. And with reminders, it's always the Siri. Siri is still a little bit of a second class experience if you want to use it with OmniFocus or Todoist or some other task app, because you got to always say, yo, person and a ball. You talk out loud and you say, remind me to do this thing at this time. And the cognitive overhead of adding with OmniFocus every single time I do that, it's just not it sounds crazy, but it's no longer taking away the mental overhead that it is supposed to when I have to think about what I'm saying. So I do use reminders generally for time-based things like remind me to cover the grill a couple, I don't the grill is hot after you use it. But then I want to go inside and do stuff. So I'll usually tell my watch to, remind me to cover the grill in an hour. Time-based stuff that's not on a list or based on a project or a larger scope thing. I tend to just tell my watch to do it, and it's so much better. It makes me want to just use reminders for everything, but it is one of those areas where I feel still, even I think with these newer features, I feel limited by it. Whereas Notes, on the other hand, is just good enough that I feel most people could get by with it. It's just got so much now. You can do shared notebooks of shared notes with other people. They actually announced new features to shared notes. You can now, it does track changes You can like add tags to Apple Notes with the new update that's coming out this fall. So like you can put a little hashtag symbol and then a word, and that counts as a tag. You can even do stuff like you can call out a person in the note by typing an @ symbol and their name. So like it's honestly, Apple Notes for me, sharing with other users has often been for me like my way of trying to, like, I'm always trying to get people to do that instead of Google Docs, because Google Docs is like in a web browser and it's like ugly and not the best experience. That maybe some opinions I can share on that another time. But Apple Notes is just real good at the sharing stuff. It's for me not been as good for the research dumping, like OCRing PDFs and allowing me to like attach images to it and be able to search the text. Only that's changing too. Did you see? They're gonna like Apple is gonna be able to search for words inside of both photographs in the Photos app and in Notes, where you can like literally, if you're standing in front of a Chipotle, you'll be able to like take a picture of yourself in front of Chipotle and then hold your thumb over the logo, Chipotle logo, on the storefront and like actually like highlight it and copy and paste it like you're handling like regular typed text in a photo. Am I explaining that well?
You are. Did you feel like you were going back to 2012 Evernote when they were describing Notes, the updates?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I recently, in the research apps episode I did with David McDonald a couple episodes ago, I mean, we talked about how I'm kind of like using Evernote because I was using DevonThink, which is like a more research-heavy kind of like power tool for this kind of stuff, but Evernote is just like a little more reliable for me, and so I don't know. I mean, these features make me think like it's just, again, it just gets like close enough that I think maybe I can actually ditch Evernote, and then I don't know. I mean, like it's still, the main thing still is like I love being able to clip websites and text search them later. I don't think that Apple Notes can do that, but that, I mean, gosh, they're getting so close. Oh, you can. And I really like emailing stuff into my Note app, which I know that Evernote can do. I think DevonThink can do that. I don't know if Apple Notes is going to ever, that's like that's a super nerd thing. But like I said, it's getting closer. And this is, again, they always hook you with some system thing. And for me, the biggest hook with Apple Notes over the past couple of iOS updates has been that they keep making ways to get a note into it quicker with the Apple Pencil on an iPad. Yep. And so like a couple years back, you double tap the pencil to the screen when it's off, and you can instantly start taking a quick note by handwriting. And
now they have a new quick note feature.
Right, which like works from anywhere in the system, doesn't it?
Yeah, it literally, and it somehow remembers where you were in the system and can, like, when you pull that note back up, get you back to that. So if you start taking a note from a website in Safari, then when you're looking at that note later, you can tap and go right back to that website. Right.
It's almost like a quick capture, which is what we've talked before about using things like a task management app to quickly capture stuff, or like I know that one popular thing is like Drafts, the note app, is a great way to just like, it's text only, but it's a great way to like save some URLs and some stuff. It's kind of where a lot of my ideas start. But I look at this feature and I think to myself, okay, well now if I'm on my iPad, it doesn't matter what I'm looking at. If I drag my Apple Pencil from the lower right corner of the screen, it's basically going to clip that and then let me take some quick handwritten notes. To me, I'm asking myself, like, could that be my new inbox, my new digital inbox? I mean, I'm reading online that it can take whatever you throw at it. If you're looking at something that's text, if you're looking at a website, if you're looking at a reminder, like whatever you're looking at, it captures that thing into notes.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the possibility. And I think, when I taught, I had a podium up at the front, and I taught, for those who don't know, I taught elementary school. I taught second grade for several years, and then my last year teaching, I was in third grade. And, I up at the front of the classroom with an iPad and sometimes projected it up to the screen. I ran everything from my iPad Pro and took notes and all sorts of stuff, and being able to quickly do that on certain things would have been huge for me.
Yeah, I mean, it really just fits that, and this comes back to sort of the topic of my book, is like sort of fitting into this mold of like the frantic teacher who's like never, just like got sticky notes everywhere, and you're writing whatever you can on the quickest piece of paper you can. I mean, this is like literally taking that problem and solving it digitally by just saying like, hey, it does not matter where your brain is, where the nearest piece of paper is. Like, if you've got this device in front of you, you have a quick way to take a note, and we'll just save them all. I mean, this could replace Evernote and the Stickies app and sticky notes themselves for teachers all in one swoop. And I like the idea that they don't immediately go into your notes. They just sort of hang as quick notes until you import them. And I'm gonna guess, I haven't seen screenshots, but I'm gonna guess I'd be shocked if there was no way to get to the share sheet from there. Like, to me, I can see this as being a way to get, like, maybe I don't want to send it to notes. Maybe I want to send it to OmniFocus or my reminders app or something. So I think it's cool. I'm glad you started there.
I have another question for you. So, you were talking about doing with your Patreon subscribers, doing a monthly Zoom meeting. What would it take to get you to do that inside of FaceTime?
Are you really asking me that question, or are you leading on to the next feature we should talk about from the keynote? Zoom is like Kleenex now. It's a household name. Everyone has it installed. Like, I think that it is, unfortunately, because I have some issues with Zoom. Like, Zoom is not the friendliest platform, but it definitely is everywhere. It's cross-platform, and they made it really easy with the whole, like, you don't need to have it installed. Like, if you're on the receiving end, you can just get a link sent to you, and then it'll run in a web browser. And I don't know what happened. Well, I do know what happened. COVID happened. But now FaceTime is getting lots of crazy good new features, one of which is that you can send a FaceTime link to someone that they can put in their calendar for a future time, and then they can join that link, just like Google Meet, just like Zoom, just like all the education tools we've been using all year long, and it will even work on the web for Android and Windows users.
And they've added things like they'll use portrait mode, that iPhones and iPads have to blur the background for you. There's all sorts of stuff that basically brings it in line with Zoom. But then on top of that, there's all the Airplay features so that you can not only share your screen like you can in Zoom, but, watch content together and things like that. So I think it's really interesting. I'm curious. I've used Zoom even before the pandemic. Most of the school districts that I work with are, they're spread all over. So I've been Zooming with them even before. And, I just can't see FaceTime taking over in education. But I'm curious what you think as an educator who's had to do this remotely, if you would even think about trying that.
I mean, I certainly saw that announcement and thought to myself, I probably could go back to using FaceTime for my private lessons. I mean, I only had one private student who didn't have FaceTime, and we just used Google Duo, which, I think Google Duo, they're the ones who should be scared by this feature, not really Zoom and Google Meet. Well, I guess Google, I mean, I actually read that Google Meet is going to collapse Google Duo into it at some point, which who knows if that's the best idea. I mean, it certainly would be a little more simple, but Google Meet now has so much stuff that I feel like you wouldn't want to use in just a basic one-to-one call. So I don't know. I mean, I think I would definitely consider it. Zoom has added lots of features for musicians, but I think Zoom is like worse settings for audio by default, but then when you tweak it a lot, you can make them better. So I mean, FaceTime more is just like it does its best guess at what things should sound like, but it does better with the default settings. So I don't know. I mean, it's simple. I like it. My students are all trained on Zoom now, but I could see myself using FaceTime at least for I probably won't be teaching virtually by the time that this feature ships, but I definitely can see myself trying to get some people off because Zoom is now at this point real sticky. I can certainly see like people trying to Google Meet me and like me being like, actually, could we try FaceTime? Oh, well, there's like the one Android person, maybe they'll be willing to try this web app thing. I don't know. My music team uses FaceTime when we chat, not Google Meet, because we're all on iPhone, and we have sort of like just through habit of using Google Meet with our school district, we have started to meet on Google Meet, and I think that that's just out of habit of like it being a place where we always are, so we just stick to the tool. But I don't know. I mean, FaceTime is just such a friendlier experience on the device than Google Meet. Google Meet is like real, and not only is Google Meet real messy of an app, like it just, I just don't like web apps, like the buttons feel flimsy, it misbehaves. I accidentally like swipe backwards and then it basically disconnects me from the Meet because I'm in a web browser. So like but if you accidentally hit the back button or so, there's just so many things that can go wrong in a web browser, whereas Zoom and FaceTime have like, they're apps. They have like tactile buttons that do things reliably when you tap them, and there's just like less of this visual clutter on the screen because you're not looking at your favorites bar at the top and then where the URL gets typed and all of your extensions and stuff. It's just, FaceTime is a good experience. So I don't know. I would like to try to convince the people who I can to get back on it. This might help.
Yeah, I can't. And, there's also things like I think FaceTime is limited to 32 people. I think it's either 32 or 36, which, for most classes would be enough. But, if you're doing a webinar or a conference or something like that, you still got to have a more enterprise tool like Zoom. So I just was curious what your thoughts were on the FaceTime updates.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be something I use. It might be just that like the family wants to get together some night and chat and they want to use Zoom, and maybe I can convince them to use FaceTime because we all have iPhones or something. Because again, Zoom, like I have nothing against Zoom. Zoom is just not as friendly. Like it's not as delightful to use, but it's also just like a little bit more user hostile, I think. But again, people are like so used to it at this point in the year that I don't know, maybe it's here to stay. We'll see. I would, I'm a FaceTime fan. Crazy they opened it up, but it's funny, like they obviously did that because COVID has kind of forced our hand. I mean, and obviously like they could have never known, but like that is a feature that could have really, I think the people who were going to use FaceTime were going to use FaceTime instead of Zoom no matter what this past year. But I think that like the linking thing in the calendar would have definitely got a lot more people. Like when your family gets together, like Zoom would not be the default. Because, I know people who it's like they all have iPhones, but Zoom, it's like, let's get on Zoom. Well, why are we getting on Zoom? Well, I don't know. Zoom is that's just what we do now. We Zoom. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And when I FaceTime, basically the only person I FaceTime with is my mom. And that really started in COVID. We just mostly talked on the phone before that. But I have my youngest child, when COVID hit, was 9 months old. And since she couldn't come be around him, we FaceTime constantly. And so now that's just kind of our thing. So it is very much and even like I have moved also in the pandemic away from Nashville, and I'm down in Auburn, Alabama now. And some of my close friends in Nashville, we all have iPhones, but when we get together, though, it's over Zoom. So it feels like FaceTime has always been, even though they've announced years ago group FaceTime, it's still a one-on-one family thing, and Zoom is everything else. So I'll be curious to see if that changes.
Yeah, totally.
I have those were like the things that I wanted to start with, but this is your show, and I kind of commandeered the topic.
I do want to say, like, I do want to talk about a couple more things that I think will be most relevant to teachers and like getting work done. And then I maybe can just like dump. I kind of want to end this section of the episode with like a lightning round where basically I'm just going to list every cool feature rapid fire that I think that I wrote a note about.
Love
while
it.
Watching. Okay, so here there's like 3 or maybe 4 other things that I think are relevant to teachers. Let me first say though, FaceTime is getting a bunch of cool features that are not really relevant to work. They're just fun, and I'm like excited about this. So there's like this new sharing paradigm where you can, on a FaceTime call, you can share, like basically listen to music in sync with each other or watch TV shows in sync with each other, and you can have. You can watch it on your device or on your respective phones. You can like beam it out to your nearest TV or like HomePod speaker or Airplay speaker or whatever. So you're basically can be like listening to music or watching a TV show on like a really nice giant screen or on a really nice speaker in sync while like just hanging out together. And I think that that's cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to do, they already announced partnerships with, the big streaming services, Disney Plus, Hulu. I don't think, was Netflix one of them? Anyway, so being able to like watch shows together with my friends, especially like I mentioned, I moved in the middle of a pandemic. I haven't made new friends here yet. I've only been vaccinated for a month or so, but it's exciting to have the ability to do that and share that more easily with folks.
What's the first movie that we're going to watch together on FaceTime?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like it's going to have to be something music related.
It could be. You have probably seen more music movies than I have.
That's true. I mean, we could also do just a fun, like an episode of Ted Lasso.
Oh, I would love to watch that. Well, season 2 comes out before this update. Oh, but we're going to be on the iPad OS beta.
We'll be on the iPad OS beta. We'll have to figure that out.
All right, we're going to have to watch some Ted Lasso together this summer. I'm down. Oh, by the way, anyone who's listening to this, yes, there are public betas of these coming out next month. Don't install them. We are both reckless. Don't follow our example. Or do. I can't. You're an adult. I can't tell you what to do. But I'm expecting to break my iPad this summer trying out some of these new features. So the iPad has been criticized for years and years and years for its wacky multitasking features, which are not powerful enough for pro users, but also are not like very discoverable for just like regular people. Like they're more in the way of typical iPad use than they are helpful. So, Apple has, I think this is where like the whole like, M1 chip, like the new iPad has the M1 chip, which is like pretty well known as like the new cool chip in all the Macs, which makes them very, very powerful. And I think by releasing an iPad with the M1 chip, lots of tech nerds got excited that maybe there was like more to this story, like, ooh, they're going to like let Mac apps run on the iPad, or Mac OS can run on the iPad. And, we didn't see anything like that. Instead, what we saw in this keynote was, iPad is just trucking along like normal. It's getting refined and a little bit better. They are fixing some of the multitasking features, which we can talk about. But most importantly, it's just remaining the same operating system it was last year, just with refinements and tweaks, and definitely not. I mean, some people wanted there to be like even like pro apps announced because it is. The new iPads you can plug them into a Thunderbolt display, and it's like, why would you do that if you're just basically blowing up a giant iPad to a monitor, like a 27-inch monitor? We still don't really know why the iPads can do that. I would suspect that maybe in the next year we'll find out, like, I don't know, maybe like if they finally put Final Cut Pro on the iPad, you could like show your video, preview on the secondary monitor or something. But yeah, no like grand new vision for the iPad's operating system. Basically just refinements to multitasking, but they are good-looking refinements.
And I think it also goes back to that thing that I said earlier about bringing the platform together. Just like widgets that we got on the home screen of iPhones can now be on the iPad. And things like that were missing from the iPad, it now has. So there's a lot of bringing everything together again for the iPad as well.
This is also like 99% of the reason I want to put the beta on my iPad is not even just to try the new multitasking, but because I really like customizing my home screen, and I want to put that giant new there's like a new widget size for iPad only that's like giant, and I want to put it on. There's like a Files app which like shows all of like thumbnail previews of all of your recently like 16 most recently opened files across devices. So like if I'm doing something on my Mac, editing a file, I close it down and then I hop on my iPad, like it shows up on a little shelf on my home screen, and I want that. I just want to look at them all and tap on them more easily.
The other thing about the iPad that I think is exciting that is also on iOS 15 and macOS Monterey is the new focus modes. And I think, while we're talking about customizing your home screen and doing things, the focus thing is really interesting.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I just want to say, should we describe why iPad multitasking is going to be better, or can people just like, I can put some links in the show notes. Basically, like if you've ever done the thing where you hold up two apps at the same time, you have to like drag the app icon on top of like an already open app, and it's super clumsy and awkward, and they're going to like make these contextual little menus that are always visible on the screen that are going to just to make that like a ton easier. I don't know. That's maybe all I need to say about that.
Yeah, I think that's good. It's hard to describe. When you see it, it makes perfect sense, and you understand why it's so much better than what we had before.
Or if you've never done it because you didn't even know you could, or because it is clumsy, I think it's going to be discoverable enough that it's going to be pretty obvious to you that when you update your iPad this fall how to do it. Yes, so I'm glad you brought up the focus zones, because I was going to forget about it, and this is super applicable to being a teacher.
Yeah, so, we have Do Not Disturb. We're used to that. I leave my iPad and my Mac in Do Not Disturb pretty much all day because I don't want, to be on Zoom and have a notification show up, my wife sending me something and it show up on a customer call when I'm sharing my screen, things like that. But then sometimes when I'm not on Zoom, I miss important notifications, from Slack or, messages from my coworkers. So what Focus does is you can say, you can create different, I don't know, is modes the right word, Robby? Like,
yeah, I mean, in the same way that, like, there's do not disturb while driving mode, like where you can tell your phone when you're in the car connected to your Bluetooth, infotainment system, basically, like, it's like do not disturb, but some stuff can get through. Like, it'll read you your messages instead of, you tapping on them to actually open your app and fiddle with it. So it's kind of like new special versions of do not disturb, but with, like, levels of customization about, like, which kinds of notifications can get through. So, like, there's, like, some default ones, like one called work, and you could presumably say, hey, like, I want Slack notifications to show up on the lock screen when I'm in work mode, but, like, not messages from anyone except my wife. You could say, hey, you can actually customize even, like, you can have, this is so cool. You can have, like, separate home screens just for different focus modes. So you could have your whole home screen basically just show, like, productivity widgets when you're in work focus mode, like, only show me my email inbox, only show me, like, how my task management app to-do list, or, like, whatever. You could, like, have your tonal energy tuner app be on that home screen, and then, like, Twitter could be nowhere to be found on that home screen. Like, and then when you're out of work mode and you're in, like, whatever regular mode, your home screen will go back to how you had it set, and all of your notifications will pipe through.
Yeah. I'm really excited to play around with this. Oh, and the other thing about it is it syncs between your devices. So if I'm getting ready to get on Zoom and I have a Zoom mode, then I set it on my Mac that I'm sitting here working at, and my iPad and my iPhone go into Zoom mode as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I'm glad you keep mentioning Zoom, because for me this past year I absolutely could have used some custom settings for, like, when I'm teaching online, because, like, I really do not want do not disturb off, or rather on, when I'm teaching, but I really don't want my texts specifically to come through unless it's from my wife, because, like, people are just constantly texting me, and, like, those show up on the screen. If I'm sharing my screen, I don't want all my text messages showing up on my screen, to my students.
Yep.
And before anyone tells me I should share a tab in Google Meet, I don't like doing that. I like to just have my whole screen. I like to have basically, like, one of my two screens just be consistently visible to the kids, so that all I do is, like, drag windows from my main display onto their view. It's just how I work. It's more efficient. But I don't want I don't want my text messages popping up there, but there's plenty of other notifications that, wouldn't be so bad. Like, this might sound chaotic to some, but, like, the Soundtrap, which is an app where my students collaborate on musical projects together, I get updates when certain kids, like, are working on those from Chrome. And it's pretty cool, actually, to know, like, that if I'm working with a group of kids and Chrome is maybe, like, not the foreground window to me, but, like, one of the kids who's in our class, like, logs into the session with Soundtrap, I get a little Chrome notification, like, so-and-so has joined the Soundtrap project. And I'm like, hey, that's, like, actually kind of useful to me. So, I would love to get some notifications, not others. You can build these custom. So it's not just like I think Apple is going to recommend things to you. Like, here's a work thing that gives you, no text messages. Here's a whatever thing that gives you this, but you can actually, like, create a total one from scratch and give it its own name, it looks like.
Yeah. And have as many as you want. You could have, I'm with my family right now, I'm eating dinner, and have a home screen that, obviously you don't want to get your phone out. I'm coming up with examples on the fly, which you should never do on a podcast, but, you've got a family time, so don't have any of the apps that distract me from that. I don't want to be scrolling social media when I'm with my kids, so hide that. But then, after everybody's in bed or whatever, I can sit and scroll Twitter if I want.
Yeah, this is going to be more like customizing for me than even the widgets were when they came out last year. Like, I'm just going to want to tweak this so much, because it's I'm just now thinking about the power of like I really wrestle with when I'm in email, and I think over the past 2 years I've really taught myself to, like, there's two modes of, like, email that are sort of contrary to each other but that work for me, and one of them is, like, sort of just constantly sort of, like, addressing them when I can, and then the other is, like, nope, just open it, like, 2 to 3 times a day and empty it and triage everything so that it, if it's not something I can deal with now, snooze it. If it's a task, put it in OmniFocus, like that sort of thing. And it might be interesting to experiment with, like, maybe I want to have some, like, a mode that's, like, called productivity mode, where, like, my email, not only is email a thing I'm dealing with, but it's like I've got a widget on my home screen that shows me my inbox or something. And I've got, maybe I have other modes of focus where, like, email is, like, not even on any of my home screens, not even a widget, not even anything. Like, notifications don't even come through at all for it.
And then on top of that, and I'm sure we're going to talk about shortcuts here in a minute coming to the Mac, but for those of you who aren't aware, shortcuts is Apple's automation tool that has been a part of iOS and iPadOS since iOS 12. And before that, it was a third-party app called Workflow. And you can basically cause multiple things to happen based on triggers. So one of the new triggers for a shortcut in iOS 15 is starting a focus mode. And so then, Robby, I know I saw your blog post about Timery and how you use that for time tracking. You could set a focus mode and have just turning that focus mode on trigger a certain timer starting in Timery for you.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm thinking about exactly that thing. And you can have, right, so not only can you have it be a trigger to like start certain shortcuts, but I have a widget on my lock screen that shows me a couple of shortcuts that I can run. And, they're like more, at this point, they're more like transitionary things. As I don't have enough like work-related apps that have support for shortcuts where I can build a lot around my job. But I do have a lot of stuff for like transitioning in and out of the home. Like I've got one that opens the garage door and like starts playing, my podcast for the commute to work, stuff like that. And it would be really cool to sort of like, right now I have them all in a stack where I sort of like swipe through like 3 or 4 pages of shortcuts, but it would be cool to just basically have like basically tappable buttons to operate shortcuts, but which buttons I see is dependent on a certain time of day or mode that I'm in, and I'm excited about that. Well, shortcuts is kind of a cool thing because like, let's talk about this next. We have certainly talked about automating things on the Class Nerd, and I know we're both really passionate about it. Shortcuts is probably the most user-friendly way to create automations. I mean, you can do anything from as simple as turning a video on your camera roll to a GIF to like running, scripting languages, So it's coming to the Mac.
Yeah, just for reference, I used to post the entire Class Nerd podcast to the web using APIs through shortcuts. I won't explain what that means. I won't get into the technicalities of that, but I just had a button that was like post podcast. It would grab the file out of files and send it to the internet. It was awesome. So you can get really, really complex with it, or you can just do something simple like when I push this button, this Timery timer starts and it opens a particular app for me. Just a 2-step thing. Yeah,
a lot of mine that are complicated I stole from people who are way smarter than me, or are like really simple things. When you're in shortcuts, it'll recommend to you actions that you do in your apps if those apps have created, steps that can be used in shortcuts. So like if I do run a timer pretty often that says, hey, I'm timing how long, because one of my Timery timers is to track how long I spend grading, because I'm genuinely curious to know how to be more efficient at that. So I could, so like because Timery has shortcut support, when I open shortcuts, it actually says like, do you want to make a shortcut that starts this timer? Like a shortcut can literally just be one action that is recommended to you by the app shortcuts itself. So things like Timery timers, are recommended to me. Or like if you open an app at a certain time of day, you can have a button that like, like I have one that plays. And when I wake up in the morning, I listen to podcasts in the shower. So like I have one that plays the most recent podcast I was listening to on Overcast, which is where I listen to podcasts. And then it beams it to a particular speaker that I have. I have like a waterproof speaker in the shower, and it like beams the stream to that speaker. So it's like a 2-step action that's very simple, but it saves me a lot of fiddling around when I'm generally very groggy in the morning.
Yeah, I have one that I actually just made recently, Dark Noise. It was actually my app recommendation on your show a few times ago. It's a white noise app. And at night, I push one button and it connects to the HomePod that's in our bedroom and starts playing the noise that I like to have while we're sleeping, and just goes. And I don't have to go into dark noise, push play, Airplay to the speaker, anything. It just all does it with one tap.
That's a great app. I love dark noise.
So shortcuts came to the Mac. That's what we're trying.
It is. Yeah.
Before we go down a dark noise rabbit hole. So I mentioned that I ran my whole classroom from an iPad Pro. In my current job, I work from a Mac. I can't work from an iPad because I do what you were talking about earlier, where I have Zoom on one side of my screen, and I'm often sharing my screen, but on the other side, I've got Slack and other things. So if multiple members of my team and I are on a Zoom call with a customer, we can also have side conversations, things like that. I have to have multiple screens, and you just can't do that on an iPad. So I work from a Mac. And the biggest thing I have missed, And I still, every once in a while, have to pull out my iPad because I just can't figure out an easier way to do it. Is I open up my iPad or my iPhone and create a shortcut to do something. And just even if it's a one-time thing. And I have so wished that was available on the Mac because, yes, there are really powerful Mac automation tools like Keyboard Maestro and, Alfred and things like that. I haven't had time to learn them. And I know shortcuts, and shortcuts is easy. It's drag and drop. It's, and apps tie into it so well with those kind of pre-built actions like you were talking about that just get suggested, that I have longed for this. And this is probably my the feature I'm most excited about out of, anything that Apple announced at WWDC.
Well, what's going to be crazy is that they're going to make, a lot of your shortcuts from iOS are going to just work, period, when you open it on the Mac for the first time. But then apps are going to be able to really easily add steps. So, if there are Mac apps that, either do have an iOS version that supports shortcuts or that doesn't, they'll be able to really easily add actions to the Mac. And then what's really cool is that you can do Mac-like things. I'm picturing now, you mentioned Keyboard Maestro, which is, probably the coolest make stuff automatically happen on your computer app that exists for the Mac, at least in my opinion. But now I'm just picturing, the Keyboard Maestro people could probably make things that you've set up in Keyboard Maestro happen as steps or actions in shortcuts. So if you wanted to have shortcuts be your dominant environment where you automate things and then pull in other automation tools as part of your shortcuts, it's going to bridge the gap, and it's going to be the ultimate automation tool on Mac, I think, assuming, and I assume that people at Keyboard Maestro will want to be, in there, but it's going to basically sort of bridge this gap of all these simple iOS things that people have done, but also all these more complex things that people like to do on the Mac, writing scripting language, or if you've ever used, the Automator is sort of the tool on the Mac that inspired the Shortcuts app to exist, and now you'll be able to even import your Automator automations from the Mac into Shortcuts, which means that Shortcuts adds lots of cool new things that it can do because Automator could do things that Shortcuts couldn't do. So now things like splitting a PDF, into different pages automatically, and saving them as different files, and then renaming each separate file as a different thing. Those kinds of actions are going to get all of a sudden, they'll be possible in Shortcuts for the Mac, but then also on the iOS version of Shortcuts.
And even going back to our conversation about multitasking on the iPad, there's the ability, you can say, open this app on the right side of a split screen and this app on the left side of the split screen. So you could even technically, because you can actually set either in a widget or as an icon, an app icon on your iPad home screen, you can set shortcuts to be those. You could make an icon that opens up a pair of apps already, which is just crazy cool.
Yeah, even though I said earlier that a lot of my teaching apps don't support, they don't have their actions available in Shortcuts, that, which you just said, is going to save me so much time. One of the most stressful times for me is the 5 minutes, the 2 minutes before band class starts, and then the first 5 to 10 minutes of band. Because I just have kids who have no sense of that I'm busy, coming up to me and fix, when I play D, it doesn't make a sound, or you didn't grade my thing, or blah, blah, blah. They're just coming at you. And I'm just trying to plug my computer into the sound system and start the rehearsal. And I've got already 8 things on my mind already. So to be able to have the computer get out of my way more and say, hey, you know what do I do every single time I step on the podium? I open up Fourscore, which has my music on one half of the screen, and I open up GoodNotes on the other half of the screen because that usually has some lesson plans or some whiteboard stuff I want to display on the screen. And I just fiddle. That's so fiddly every single time that I ever do it. Well, now I could have a button that's just permanently fixed to my home screen where I tap it and it does all of that organizing for me.
Yeah. I can't even get my head around how I'm going to use this on the Mac, mostly just out of pure excitement. I just start thinking about ways that I could use it, and I just get so excited that I stop.
Yeah, it's going to be limitless.
Yeah.
Well, so, I want to talk about one more thing that is related to announcements from the thing, from the Keynote. So there's new continuity features that kind of string together the Mac and the iPad that are very, very cool. And this is one of the most exciting things that was shared.
Yeah. Again, as someone who loves his iPad but works primarily from a Mac. I can't wait to test this out. So what are we talking about?
So it's called Universal Control. And, basically, if you have your iPad set up next to a MacBook, for example, which a lot of people, I'm sure, configure their stuff that way, you can use the cursor and keyboard and mouse of your Mac to control the iPad. Now, you already could use your iPad as an extended, like a secondary monitor for your Mac. But what this does is it actually your iPad is behaving like an iPad. Your Mac is behaving like a Mac. But I could be like moving my mouse cursor to the right edge of my Mac's screen. And then if I keep moving it, then it'll bounce over to my iPad. And now it's acting as an iPad cursor. And that's very cool. And then basically the keyboard and the mouse start controlling the iPad instead of the Mac until you bounce the cursor back over to the Mac screen. And you can string together. It works from Mac to Mac as well. So you can have in the video they had demonstrated an iMac on the left, a MacBook in the middle, and then an iPad on the right. And they were like controlling all three with just the MacBook keyboard and mouse. And you can even drag stuff from one to the other. So like they had this scenario where they're editing something in Final Cut on an iMac, and then they have the Files app open on the iPad, 2 devices over to the right. And what they do is they reach over to the iPad, grab a file, drag it off the left edge of the iPad onto the MacBook, off the left edge of the MacBook, and then onto the iMac screen, and then drop it into a Final Cut presentation, and then, add an image to a Final Cut presentation video. So it's cool. I'll use this all the time.
Tell me how. I'm excited to hear, what you're going to use this for.
I mean, when I'm doing any kind of like logistic work where I'm at a desk, like my iPad is always set up right next to my Mac. It's always there, and I am constantly like the iPad. Like I use external keyboard and mouse, and I'm plugged into an external display. So whenever I need to start doing something that's iPad specific, or where it would be handy to have. Sometimes I want to have my Mail app, for example, open on the Mac, but sometimes it just saves a little bit of extra processing power to have that open on my iPad instead. Or maybe I just want to like not have as many windows open on my screen. And it would be really cool, like because every time I want to use the iPad, I'm like pulling it closer to myself and like resituating it and like changing my setup and everything. And then I type a couple of sentences and then I move it back. And like this is just going to basically allow me to control everything, every one of the 3 screens in front of me with the same 2 input devices. So it's just going to be frictionless. It's the kind of thing that's very, very, very nice. Is it necessary? No, but it's very, very, very nice, and people will get used to it and be sad when they can't do it.
Yeah. One of the reasons I haven't used a lot of the keyboard and mouse features on my iPad since it came out last March is very much, I've used it a little bit, is I have one Bluetooth Magic Keyboard and one Bluetooth Magic Mouse, and pairing them with the iPad and then switching them back to my Mac is kind of a pain. And this interaction has to start on the Mac and then go to the iPad, which is fine because I'm, at my desk with my Mac most of the day anyway. But I'm excited to just have more experiences using a keyboard and mouse on my iPad because I haven't done it much.
Yep, totally. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Yeah, that's a great use case you mentioned, is like having a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse or trackpad and just like constantly like fiddling with the settings to get it to go to your iPad. That'll be like a thing of the past. Okay. Should I do my lightning round? Okay,
go.
Here we go. So like the Messages app is going to, when people, I share a lot of links to things back and forth with people through Messages. Well, apps that support a new feature are going to like show you things that have been shared with you in Messages recently. So if, let's say that you share a website with me, another friend shares an Apple Music link. Well, when I go into the Apple Music app, I will see an area of music that says, hey, here's some stuff that people shared with you in Messages. Or when I'm in Safari, it'll say, here's some websites that people have recently shared with you, which is kind of cool because I often will not mark a message as read when someone shares a link with me because I want to remember it, but then I get lots of unread messages. So this will maybe just be a way when it's like kind of a low priority thing to just say like, okay, cool, I see that has been shared with me. And then like later when I have free time in the app, I'll remember, hey, Craig says check out this website. Awesome. Oh, as a nerd when it comes to getting rid of my keys and wallet, I was excited to see that not only are, this was announced last year, but now you can, certain participating cars will let you use the Apple Wallet app to unlock your car, but now certain participating locks will let you unlock your front door with the Apple Wallet. I like that. I have door locks. They probably will need to make me buy a dingus that hooks up to my Wi-Fi network to work with this feature or make me buy a new lock altogether. I'm not sure, but I like that. You're going to be able to put your driver's license in the wallet app in participating states. I guarantee you that the state of Maryland is not going to be on that. I want them to. I want to believe. I don't think it's happening anytime soon.
So can I just, I don't brag that I live in the state of Alabama. That's not something I'm like proud of. It's just a practical thing. We moved closer to family. But when I got my new Alabama driver's license, one of the things they said was, would you like a digital copy for Apple Wallet? And I have my current, and I'm sure it will work even better with the new setup, but I actually have my driver's license in Wallet already. So way to be ahead of things, Alabama.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like either you told me that earlier or I saw it on Twitter that Alabama specifically was on top of this. And yeah, Maryland, come on, get on it. Do it. All right, there's like a bunch of new weather and map stuff. I
will, just to plug for you, it was in your Discord that we talked about that. There's another plug. Boom.
There you go. I knew it was somewhere. Okay. Boom, done. Okay, cool. And when you mentioned that in the Discord, I didn't realize that it was like actually in Apple Wallet. I just subconsciously assumed that they had some like app they made you install to do it.
No, it was like I got an email saying, hey, thanks for doing your Alabama driver's license. If you want a digital copy for Apple Wallet, click here.
But like if you get
boom,
if you get pulled over, like is it actually like legal to show the Apple Wallet?
I don't know. I mean they gave it to me, so, and it's got like the same barcode on it that would get scanned that's on my physical license.
Okay.
So I don't know. I hope I don't ever find out.
Yeah, true. Okay. All right, AirPods got some stuff. So, Siri can like read you your shopping list and your reminders now. It already could read you your text notifications, but there's going to be some improvements to that. You'll be able to find your AirPods on the Find My network much more easily, which is good. Let's see. Oh, tvOS and the Mac are getting spatial audio. This is something I've really wanted for a while. This is like where you're wearing certain models of AirPods and like the music feels like it sounds like it's coming from the device. So like if you're watching a movie, not only do you hear certain things more in the left speaker than in the right, but like if you turn your head to the left, it's like moves and realigns like where everything feels like it's coming from spatially, so that it genuine, like the first couple times I tried it, I thought that I was not wearing headphones because it sounded like the music was coming from the device, not from the headphones. It's like extraordinarily cool. And the place that I want this the most is on my TV, where I actually watch movies sometimes late at night after my wife goes to bed, and she like she'll like our TV you can like control the speaker volume like wirelessly, so like I'll be watching a show and like an explosion will happen, and then all of a sudden like I'll just see the volume on the TV going down even though she's like upstairs in bed. Pretty funny. So I wear headphones at night and definitely look forward to that. iPad OS, we talked about widgets, we talked about the new larger size widget. App Library is a feature that came to the iPhone last year. Now it will be on iPad, which isn't that exciting to me, except for that they're going to put it on the dock, which is going to make it so much easier to get to all of my many apps, which I don't really organize my apps on the iPad. I'm real lazy. I've got like 10 home screens, so that'll be fun to just have like go down to like one or two home screens and then shove the rest of my apps in there. We talked about multitasking. Oh my goodness, yeah, lots of keyboard shortcuts. So multitasking, like putting an app on that one half of the screen or running a Siri shortcut are gonna like, you can like command designate a system-wide command. So you could say like, okay, like holding the command key plus like the letter Y will like open up Fourscore on the left side of the screen, and then open up my tuner app on the right side of the screen, and then like start playing my music of the day for my band. You'll be able to run shortcuts as well with those commands, so that's cool. In my notes area, I have by Evernote ? In parentheses. Oh, we already talked about that though. So some privacy stuff, some iCloud stuff that is boring. I don't want to talk about it. Improvements to health. Nothing super major there. Yeah, like we skipped the watch entirely. I mean, we did a whole episode on using the Apple Watch in the classroom, but there's just like not much here. They're just making it, I think most notably, they're going to make it a lot easier to do basic interactions like controlling your home stuff and like responding to text messages from people.
Yeah, watchOS is just all quality of life improvements. There's nothing major.
I do get excited about the home stuff, and I was excited that they dedicated some time to home stuff. You can now tell Siri to like run certain shows on the TV. Like you can say like, Siri, play the latest episode of The Mandalorian, and it'll, do that all for you, which is something that I really enjoy doing. We have a Google Nest home hub in our dining room, and I really enjoy being able to just tell it what to do. Like it'll do that already. Like literally it runs Disney Plus on it, and will, play the latest of whatever, which is, it's just cool because that's like an annoying thing to fiddle with on a remote control. So
for my kid, we have a TV in our playroom that also has a HomePod Mini underneath it. I cannot wait for this, so they can just tell Siri to do it. It's gonna be great.
That's awesome. We talked about the opening your door with your phone thing. They're going to license third-party home devices to talk. You can talk to Siri through them. I think that is super surprising to me. I'm really surprised they're doing that. It's like kind of late. They're late to the party with this because like I own no less than like 25 things that have Alexa built into them. Like I have a smoke detector that is blinking blue right now because it has that. I said the name. I'm serious. I have a smoke detector right behind me that has Alexa built into it, and it's like freaking out right now. So the fact that a HomePod is the only home device until now that can respond to Siri commands, kind of sad. But I'm glad they're doing it, though. Be super interesting. Okay, a package detection for if you have a smart home doorbell. Seems cool. What else? We talked about... Oh my goodness. I can't believe I was going to forget this. Okay, I'm doing later this summer, I'm doing a whole episode on like smart assistants and smart speakers. So if you're into this home stuff and like what's better, Siri or Amazon or like the Google Nest, well, I'm going to do a whole episode on that. And one of the things that's super annoying to me is that my smallest, tiniest Siri speaker is actually in my studio, but I actually have these giant studio monitors hooked into my computer that make like they're arguably two of the best speakers in the house. And when I run a stream of my iPhone to like all the different smart speakers in the house, it drives me absolutely bananas that like these two beautiful speakers are useless. Well, you're going to be able to, in the new Mac version, Airplay to the Mac. So I can have all of my different HomePods and Sonos speakers playing music from my phone, and I can also send that same stream to a Mac that's plugged into these speakers in the basement. Very, very cool. Okay, what else am I doing here? We talked all about, there's a newly designed Safari with... Actually, so one of my favorite things of using Chrome for online learning the past year has been grouped tabs. I have, my LMS canvas gets real cluttered and messy with all the tabs I have open, and I really like to have a group of tabs in Chrome called like Gradebook, where it's just like 3 tabs for each of my 3 classes, and I just always have those open to the respective gradebooks for each class, and then I can collapse all those tabs when I don't need the gradebook. And then I have like a section called Howard County Public Schools, which has like it has the Howard County Hub, and it has my Canvas inbox, so I can quickly get to like messaging parents and like my student database with all the phone numbers and contact information of parents. Like you can group them, and that's been really awesome. One of the things that's made it very, very difficult for me to use Safari, and now Safari is getting groups of tabs. Very, very cool. Looking forward to that. iOS Safari is getting extensions. Another thing that is very sticky for Chrome users. I am so spoiled by the Grammarly extension. People will probably make fun of me for using it, but it just catches so many of my really silly grammatical mistakes when I blog and write emails to people, and it just like recommends better, less awkward phrasings to me, and like really, really silly spelling errors. My favorite thing is that it tells me where to put hyphens. I'm like notoriously bad at using hyphens. I'm a hyphen master now because I've just been watching Grammarly underline all of my anytime there's no hyphen and there should be, it's like, come on, use a hyphen. And I'm like, yes, okay, I'm the hyphen guy now. I do it.
One thing that I'll add about the extensions piece is last year, Safari extensions were improved so that basically all a developer has to do, they can take a Chrome extension and just move it over to the Safari extensions database. It's not an app store, but the area of Safari where you can add extensions, and it will work. Well, now if it works on the Mac, it works in iOS. So basically, you can have a Chrome extension on your iPhone.
Yeah, developers have to like take the action to make that happen. But yes, it will be easier than ever before.
Yeah.
Most of the extensions I really depend on in Chrome already have Safari versions. Wow, I always wonder like what are fun episodes. I could seriously like do a whole episode on just Chrome and Safari extensions. Maybe I should do. Maybe once
I would listen.
Yeah, maybe once iOS 15 comes out. There's so much good stuff. I mean, just so using Chrome with Google Meet, like just for Google Meet alone, there's tons of things that, because Google Meet was not a very mature program when people moved to online learning last year, and there were all these like things you could install to basically it was just a modular experience. You could say like, oh, there's no mute every kid button. Well, download this extension. Now you can mute all at once. And so I'm excited to see what comes to the iPad, because I definitely miss extensions when I'm...
I was wrong, by the way. I just pulled up Safari and clicked Safari extensions, and it literally pulled up the App Store app on my Mac. It is an App Store.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it used to be on the Apple website where you would download extensions for Safari. Yeah. So I think, like with most Apple initiatives, the developers who play nice will, it'll be nice to get things like Grammarly has already announced that they have an extension coming to the iPad and the iPhone. But, we'll see. I know a lot of people like ad blockers, that kind of thing. It'll be interesting. I don't know. I don't have Chrome open right this second, but I'm trying to think if there are any extensions. Oh, there is a really cool one. Well, I'll save it for the future extension episode. No, I'll just spoil it now. Okay, there's a really cool extension that I'll put in the show notes where you can like take the audio or video of whatever website you're on and transpose it up and down semitones or make it go faster or slower.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure it's just called Transpose. I'll link it in the show notes. Okay, but still listen to my future episode where I just on a whim decided I'm going to do later this year about extensions.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right, that was my lightning round. There was obviously other details. I think we did an okay job keeping it focused on like how we can think of teachers using this stuff. So yeah, I mean that's generally it. One other thing. I tried spatial audio today. Should we?
Yeah, my album of the week, or I can't remember what we call it, but was going to have to do with spatial audio. So we can just combine it all here if you'd like.
That sounds great. Let's do it. Let's do album of the week, app of the week, and then are you aware that I do tech tip of the week now?
Oh no, I'd missed that.
You can easily just hack your way through. We'll do it last, so you'll have plenty of time to think while I'm talking.
Got it. Robby, I know we texted about this earlier, but I am a man in my mid-30s, and I can't stop listening to Olivia Rodrigo's new album. This 18-year-old girl has... Her music, I should say. The music of this 18-year-old girl has just consumed me. And now that Apple has announced spatial audio, and you may not know this, but I am now the proud owner of AirPods Pro instead of just AirPods 2 as of about a week ago. Having that plus spatial audio, I've been listening to that album nonstop. Just the last week or two since it came out, but then when spatial audio came out, the first thing I wanted to listen to was Good For You. So it sounds so good. The combination of the AirPods Pro and I even went through and was listening. Apple has created. So for those of you who don't know, sorry, I'm getting excited about a stupid teenage angsty album. But Apple announced as part of Apple Music, if you're a subscriber, what they're calling spatial audio, which Robby kind of talked about in terms of movies and TV with hearing things all around you. Well, all the instruments are mixed all around you as well through Dolby Atmos. And I swear, I listened to Apple has made playlists of songs and albums that are mixed that way already. Probably my favorite one, aside from Olivia Rodrigo's, is the last Casey Musgraves album that was the album of the year at the Grammys. I think maybe in 2019, maybe 2020. But that one is mixed that way. And I was listening through that, and that I've listened to countless times because of the way things are spaced out. I'm hearing instruments and parts that I never knew were there. I'm a huge pop music fan. The newest Justin Bieber record is one of my favorite albums that's come out in 2021. It's ridiculously good if you love pop music. And they're like background vocals and things that I had no idea were there that are just like right there in your face. I cannot get over how much I love spatial audio. I've been rambling for a while now already, and I could talk more.
I didn't want to be ignorant about it because I knew that you were going to probably mention that album and this feature. So I did the introducing spatial audio thing in Apple Music where you listen to Marvin Gaye in mono stereo and then spatial audio, and it's awesome. It's cool.
Oh, I didn't realize that was there. I haven't done a comparison.
Yeah, it's called It's in the For You tab of Apple Music. It's called Introducing Spatial Audio, and it's pretty cool. They also have they do the Weeknd song, one of his recent singles. They do it in stereo and then spatial. But I like the mono to stereo to spatial. Also, the Marvin Gaye song is less electronic. There's a lot more acoustic instruments, so you really. The Weeknd has a lot of sweeping sort of reverberated synths that kind of even when you can feel them having more of a sense of space, they all sort of have a similar blend whereas like Marvin Gaye's got like hand percussion in like bass and like acoustic and electric guitar and like just stuff where you don't just feel the spatial separation, but you like hear the tonal characteristics of each thing in a much more specific way. It's super hard, like it's hard to describe because you're not only getting a different sense of like spaciousness, like where things sound like they're mixed more around you, but you're also like things are like you're just hearing things more individually at the same time. Kind of like if you're in a live show and you like look at the conga player and all of a sudden the sound and the timbre of that instrument becomes more clear to you, and then you look over at the acoustic guitar player and that sound becomes more clear to you. It's kind of like that. Like you can hear things if you focus on a thing. You're like, wow, I can like really hear this speaking in the mix. Whereas like before, some of its frequencies were like muddied out by the other instruments that are in that same frequency range. But you can sort of hear everything with more separation. It's cool. I like it. I'm glad that Apple is doing this. I'm glad that it's not, extra charge. I don't know the implications. I don't want to be cynical right now, but I don't know what the implications are for like if these kinds of mixes cost more, like cost the artist in any way. But I do, as a consumer, if I just put on my consumer hat, I'm certainly happy that I have these. I'm looking forward to listening to more.
I feel like it's going to be something that we see from major label artists, and indie artists and things like that are just not going to be able to do that because it basically requires a separate mix. So you'd be paying twice to have an album mixed, which, a major label artist can do because the label's going to do that. So, just scrolling through the playlist that they've made, it's all like big time people, but that's also who they're using to promote it. I am sad as a ridiculous John Mayer fan that his new single that came out Friday is not available in spatial audio. But hopefully when the full album comes out in July, it will be.
I'm going to mention Michael Mayo's album Bones. And this is a great album. I guess you'd put it under the R&B and soul category. I was listening to it the other day. I was recommended on Twitter by Nate Smith, drummer, session drummer. People might know him as like he drums with the Fearless Flyers, which is like all the like string players from like the Wolfpack group, like the guitarist and the bass player, He's just like, he just like makes everything he touches so much better. His solo album he released last year is amazing, but he's not the pick of the week. He recommended this artist, Michael Mayo, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but we're listening to it in the house. I kind of just put it on when I saw this recommendation, and my wife is overhearing this, and she says, this sounds like Jacob Collier, but like with soul, and like maybe the instruments are not an intellectual exercise. And I'm like, yes, that actually is a compliment. I'm not feeling like the soul of like the singing is getting lost in the complexity of the instrumental. It's just like really tasteful. It just feels great at every turn, and it's like the arrangements are really tasty, like they're interesting, but they are not overwhelming. So that's my album pick. I hate to praise him by comparing him, but I also know that Jacob Collier is a point of reference for lots of musicians and educators. So if you like Jacob Collier, I think you'll like this album.
Awesome. I just added it to my Apple Music.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think.
I'm going to go ahead and share my app because it ties to what we're talking about. I can literally only remember one app. I think this is my maybe fourth time being on Music Ed Tech Talk, and I can only remember one app of the week that I have shared. So if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But I'm going to talk about Music Harbor. Are you familiar with Music Harbor, Robby?
I don't think you've mentioned this before.
Okay. So Music Harbor, when you get it from the App Store, I think it's a free download, and then it's got a couple in-app purchases. I think all in, you've got about $6. 6 ducks in the app. That would be interesting. And you don't even have to have all the different components of it. But when you first open it up, it scans your music library and looks for artists that you like. And then if any of them have albums coming out soon, it will let you know of upcoming albums. And then also, most music drops on Fridays. So I just open up Music Harbor every Friday and see what's come out, because sometimes people will release surprise things that weren't, announced or something. And it's been a really good way just for me I found out about a lot of great stuff that I wasn't aware was coming out from artists that I really like. And you can just really quickly listen to a sample of it right in there. You can directly add it to your library right then from the app, which is really cool. It's just like a quality of life thing for people who love music.
This is awesome. I'm pulling in my Apple Music library right now so that it can analyze which artists I like.
Nice. And the pieces that are in-app purchases are just like some of the customizations of how you view it, the formatting. You can do some additional filtering, like I tell it where I don't want acoustic releases because I don't care, or remixes. I just don't care about a remix most of the time. And so you can filter a few of those. You can filter if it's a song featuring the person that you like. Those are the kind of in-app purchase things. But in general, I think it's free. So it's really cool.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned my blog post about Timery earlier. The title of that post was App of the Week, and I'm going to do some consistency here, and I'm going to make that also my podcast pick. It is the Mac app of the version Timery, which is a time tracking app that was on iOS. It's actually a client, which means that it is like an interface for interacting with another service, which is called Toggle. So if you are in any way, shape, or form a person who is interested in tracking your time, I recommend going to toggle.com and trying a free account. You set up a couple of different timers that represent the way you spend your time. And what I like about Toggle is, and specifically Timery, is that they both kind of eliminate the friction of, like one of the hardest things about tracking time is remembering to start and stop the timers. It's not very fun. Well, Timery, if you download it and use it, like we were talking earlier, it has like Siri shortcut support. There are lots of ways you can automate the timers to automatically start. So like when I am working on, let me think of a good example. So like when I am working on email, for example, I might have a shortcut that's like, hey, this is the shortcut that I run when I'm like at my desk and like doing planning, basically lesson planning. And maybe it'll run a timer that automatically times my lesson planning while also like doing a couple of other things that I commonly do on my phone at that time. Timery is also just like a better user experience than Toggle, but it until recently was not on the Mac. So it is now on the Mac using the same kind of technology that I talked about in episode, I think 31. If you listen to the Fourscore episode from a few weeks ago, we talked about how like iPad apps can be turned into Mac apps by developers, and that's essentially what's happening with Timery. It's really nice. It's this, it's just an easier and cleaner and more friendly way to use Toggle. The only knock I'll give against it is that the actual Toggle app for the Mac does some things that are leveraging the kinds of like system control that the Mac can afford, like things like it can tell what apps you're working within and like when your keyboard and your mouse are active or idle, and it can recommend, hey, I've noticed you like haven't typed anything for the past 6 minutes. Do you want to like not count that as time towards your currently running timer? And Timery cannot do that stuff, but what it loses in terms of like a couple of features, it gains in its ease of using the user interface. So it's a great iOS app that I can now run on the Mac. And time tracking is cool. Like, it sounds like this nerdy thing, but like honestly, most music teachers I know are like teaching private lessons, doing summer camps, like doing other sorts of side hustles, all sorts of things that are absolutely worth tracking your time for to help yourself be more productive and understanding of how to manage yourself. So Timery for the Mac.
It's awesome. I have a thought on what my tech tip was, but I would love to hear yours first to see if it kind of lines up with the kind of thing you do.
Okay. That would require me to have planned it in advance. So hold on, I have a note of like I sometimes try to pair.
Well, you can then I can just talk, and if it doesn't,
no, I'm gonna.
Work,
you know what I'm
then...
gonna do? I'm doing the Transpose Chrome extension. I'm just backdating it to like 20 minutes ago when I was talking about this. I'm linking it in the show notes. This is a Chrome extension that transposes. Like, you can be watching a YouTube video and you can run this extension called Transpose, and it will like raise and lower the pitch by semitones, slow down or speed it up. What's cool is that it works on a variety of different sites that have audio and video running through them, so it's not like YouTube natively has a built-in feature to slow it down, but this works on tons of different pages that have audio and video embedded into them. You can imagine like being a music teacher running a Google Meet, and you're like playing to a play-along track on some website, or you're like showing your students a video and you just want to like have them watch it a little slower or like hear it in their own key. This is a really cool extension that'll do it.
It's cool. I'm going to pivot on what I was going to do based on what you just said.
Nice.
I can't remember if I've talked about this before, but Robby, what do you use for your RSS service? the back-end service.
I am trying out Feedbin, which is paid, but I don't know if I'm getting the value out of it, so I might go back to Feedly at the end of my subscription.
Okay, so I have been a Feedbin subscriber for a long time. I don't know, sometime towards the beginning of 2021, I think it was after crazy people tried to take over the Capitol, not too long after that, I decided that I needed a break from Twitter. But I don't want to miss out on certain pieces of Twitter, like when you post something interesting, or really the Apple community that I have become a part of or enjoy following is what I still want to see. But I just didn't need any more pandemic stress or political stress or anything like that. And Feedbin, you can subscribe to Twitter accounts inside of your RSS client. So I have just some of my like close friends that I still follow on Twitter. Like I follow you through Feedbin, so I don't ever miss anything that you post. And like a lot of the Relay FM podcast hosts I still follow. And then also a lot of Auburn football stuff I follow as well. And then I don't have to see Twitter and I don't have to argue with people. I see it and it's right there next to the articles that I'm reading, and it's less of a fire hose. It's more controlled, and it has allowed me to kind of stay connected to things on Twitter without having to be in the mess of Twitter. And I just really recommend it.
Yeah, it pairs super well with my app of the week pick from last episode, which is Reader.
Yep, that's exactly what I use it in.
Yeah, it's real nice. And you can subscribe to, I don't know if I zoned out for a second and you already mentioned this, but it also works with email newsletters. So
I didn't mention that, but I do that all the time, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Like if like for me, I like to have all my subscriptions to blog posts in this app rather than like coming through my email. But if you do have someone who you really like to stay in touch with, or like an artist you follow or an organization that sends out like regular stuff, you can basically have that go to this feed, so that like rather than cluttering up your communication app of choice, instead it's sort of like all rolling into a feed of basically like information you want to stay on top of. And I love it in an age where so many of the, because I'm with you, like I have become extraordinarily jaded and bitter about social media, particularly Facebook and Instagram, and how the algorithm pretty much is terrible. I mean, I could go on a huge rant about this, but I mean, I love the idea of taking the curation into your own hands and saying like, hey, I'm going to allow like the nature of human relationships to control this. Oh, someone recommends a blog to me, I'll subscribe to it. Someone recommend, and it goes for things too other than like news media. It goes for music too. Like I don't want to just let Spotify tell me what I'm going to listen to. I'm going to take recommendations from friends and make my own playlists, or go seek out albums by artists that I like and listen to them in their entirety. Like I just think that with all the algorithmic stuff that's going on, it feels a lot saner and like gives me a sense of control to be able to basically choose, here are the things I want to subscribe to, and then find an app and a service like Reader and Feedbin that say, here's the things you subscribe to in the order that they're published, nothing else, you're in control.
Yeah. Yeah, I am with you, by the way, on the... I have no Facebook or Instagram anymore. What's the Netflix documentary about how the algorithm is ruining the world?
Yeah, I watched it. What is it called?
Yeah.
People will want to know that.
Sorry. You'll find it. You'll put it in the show notes.
I want to say, hold on. The Social Dilemma.
Yeah, so I can still... I'm not completely disconnected in that I still have access to Twitter, and for things like WWDC yesterday, I opened up the Twitter client again for the first time in a while and followed along more live than what Feedbin does. But in general, I've been really happy and have not missed it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do some closings. I usually do this after the fact, but I'm just gonna like close it, I think, with you here, right? Because that's more fun, right?
Yeah.
So I think that about wraps it up. People can find you. Where can people find you if people want to, like, speaking of you not being on social media?
Yeah, it's a little hard. I'm in the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord.
I love it. You are the perfect person for this.
And if I had someone mention me on Twitter the other day, and I see it. I check occasionally, so at Craig McClellan is probably still the best place to find me on the internet.
And you can check out our now retired podcast, The Class Nerd, on the podcast app of your choice.
Yep.
Okay, you can find me at robbyburns.com. Musicedtechtalk.com will take you straight to the blog where all podcast episodes and blog posts are posted. There's a lot of ways you can keep up with me. You can actually subscribe through an RSS app of your choice, like Reader, using a service like Feedbin or Feedly if you want to use a free one. I also have an email newsletter if you just want to get my podcast episodes and my blog posts in an email, because that's your flavor, that's your way. You can do that as well. The podcast you can subscribe to in the podcast app of your choice. More shameless self-promotion. If you have not already, it would be very helpful to me if you gave this a rating and a 5-star little tap in the Apple Podcasts app. It goes a real long way. I really do, like, it's anecdotal because I don't like have the analytics to prove it, but I can swear to you that like more ratings and like listeners are like, there's like a relationship between those two. So if you're listening to this, you like the show, it's like a tap away. 5 stars, I would appreciate it. Thanks. And let me know, like, I'm curious to hear from those of you who are listening. Like, I'm going to be doing some fun summer topics, like the smart speaker topic, like talking about Apple betas, running it on my iPad this summer, in addition to some really, really great and fun topics that are coming up. Last week's episode was all about using Soundtrap. I talked about my 3 most successful Soundtrap lesson ideas from the past year. All of them were like project-based things. Well, I purposefully did not talk about how I have used Soundtrap in the band classroom this year, because next week's guest is a very, very special guest, composer Alex Shapiro. She is coming on. She is the writer of a curriculum called Putting the E in Ensemble, which is a curriculum she wrote for performing arts programs at the beginning of COVID, where basically students can, it's basically an assignment designed to get students in performing ensembles composing for the first time. And it's all asynchronous. Students compose their own melodies, record them, and then you as the teacher distribute those recordings back to the kids, where they sort of make like musical collages out of all the things they've recorded. I'm wrapping this project up right now with my band kids, and it's been a real success. So she's going to come on. We're going to talk about her career, what she does, and like all about this project, because I suspect that even when schools start to return in person next year, I'm going to do this project again. It was really awesome. So Alex Shapiro, stay tuned for that. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at Robby Burns. I've been posting some more videos on my YouTube lately. Check me out there. Check me out on Twitch, where I'm doing my live streams. Join the Patreon and become a part of the lives, or become a part of the Discord, or both. I'm looking forward to engaging with you all in whatever way I can. And I don't know, Craig, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's great.
Sweet. Well, this was fun.
I know. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah. We should probably do our customary The Class Nerd sign-off, but then I'm going to like not immediately hang up on the Zoom call.
Fair enough. Yeah, I like it.
Cool. Well, Craig, until the next time that I see you on the Music Ed Tech Talk podcast, stay classy.
And stay nerdy.